Okay, everybody, so we're moving on to topic 4.1. This is technology innovations from 1415 to 1750. And this topic's mainly going to cover like the technologies that are going to make it possible for the European explorers to go and on these long distance oceanic expeditions across the Atlantic Ocean to eventually discovering the Americas, as well as helping create trading posts both in Africa and within the Indian Ocean Trade Network. So this is really a basic topic. It's probably going to be a very short video by the end of this, but let's go ahead and get started. Fast forward until you get to this. I'm going to stop doing this. All right, now we're back to it. So the essential question for today is to what extent did the cross-cultural interaction spread technology that brought changes in trade and travel during the period of 1450 to 1750? So let's start off with some context here. The fall of the Constantinople in 1453 to the Ottomans, and combined with the control of the Mediterranean sea trade routes under the control of mainly the Ottomans and the Italian city-states, primarily Venice, left the rest of Europe looking for opportunities to go and find other trade routes to get to places that they had been able to get access to materials, especially in the Far East. The Crusades themselves also helped accelerate this cultural interaction with the Arab world, where a lot of the scientific ideas, which was once sometimes from classical Europe, like under the Greeks and the Romans, and then combined with the innovations of the Arab world, really gave the Europeans more understanding of important skills and technologies that will eventually help lead them to long-distance oceanic expeditions, as we'll see in today's lecture. All right, so we start with the basic, language of the curriculum itself. So knowledge, scientific learning, and technology from the classical, Islamic, and Asian worlds spread facilitating European technology developments and innovations, okay? All right, so I know we've talked about it before, but it's here. It's going to come up again, and because it does play a big role. And so, I mean, if you don't see a question on the AP exam about Lateen Sails, I would be disappointed in College Board because they've mentioned it in a lot of different levels of this class. So the triangle sails that were used primarily by the Arab world and such, it allows the sailors to catch the wind in different directions. That is a huge advantage over just the basic square sails that were used primarily in Europe up until the introduction of these sails in right around the 12th century or so. So the cultural interactions that do occur between the Europeans and the Arab world do lead to this technology being adopted, especially when we talk about the Iberian Peninsula, where those countries of Portugal and Spain will play a humongous role in the movement of people across these long-distance expeditions, and they're going to use on their ships designs Lateen sails. So that's why it's an important technology. It's a continuation. So we're talking about focused skill stuff. It's a continuation of a technology that's being used. The change here, it's being used by different people, like the Europeans. The magnetic compass, another technology that is developed in the 12th century and finds its way into Europe, or it's not designed in the 12th century, I'm sorry. It's starting to be used as a navigation device in the 12th century by both Chinese and Europeans. The fact that our magnetic, how do I put this? I am having such a brain fart right now. The magnetic field that surrounds the world is very closely aligned with the idea of north and south on maps. And so that knowledge and understanding, it allows people to have a steady course if they can use the magnetic compass to set the steady course of where you want to go. Now, this is really important when you're kind of talking about sailing at night and sailing during storms where the ocean gets kicked up and you can't really look out on a horizon and say, here's a geographical point, I'm going to aim for there, especially when you're so far out you can't see land. So this makes it possible to be able to stay in a steady direction for the long term, really important technology in helping navigate the seas. The Astrolabe is another one of those technologies that find its way into Europe, and the Astrolabe was invented by Arab merchants and used by Arab merchants, I should say, that helped them navigate within the desert, because we talked about how the desert is not always, especially in the Saharan desert, wasn't a set geographical landscape, and so the shifting sands of the dunes and so forth made it hard for you to navigate them. So what was consistent was the stars in the sky, and so the astrolabe allows them to use the stars to kind of define where the location is on Earth, especially kind of the latitude that they are on, that they are in. And this is important, especially when it comes to maritime trade and such, or maritime navigation. Because the location on the Earth is going to play a big role, especially when we're talking about wind patterns. The knowledge of the wind patterns that exist, especially in the Atlantic Ocean, there's like some parts of the latitudes that the winds go east-west, and then there's some that go west-east. So you need to be able to line your ship up to where the winds are going to catch your sails and allow you to move forward. And so this is really important technology. And so you can see right here, this is a picture of Bartholomew Diaz, who was a Portuguese explorer, which we'll talk about in the next topic, 4.2. But you can see in his portrait, like the center dead of attention, the technology that he wants to feature is the astrolabe itself, which gives you an understanding of the importance this plays in navigation. You also have the use of astrological charts, where they chart out the stars in the sky. And this is something that's been used all the way back to the Mesopotamians, one of the earliest civilizations. It's been used by the Chinese, before the modern era, or the Common Era, which is also known as before the birth of Christ. But this, astrological charts have been used by Arabs, they've been used by Greeks, they've been used by Chinese, they've been used for a very long time. And so, as time goes on, they continue to use them, but then you combine them with these other technologies that are coming into Europe, and it all together is going to make it easier and safer for people to navigate the oceans more than they'd had before in previous eras of history. All right, so the next language of the curriculum is the developments included the production of new tools, innovations in ship design, and improved understanding of regional wind and current patterns, all of which made transoceanic travel trade possible. So we're going to talk about some examples of especially new ship designs that come about as a result of these new innovations. So you're taking these old innovations that are now being introduced to Europe, and you combine them with these new ship designs, and that is what the technology is going to be, essentially, to allow them to be able to undertake these long expeditions across the ocean. So the first one is the Caravel, and the Caravel was a design ship, and it really is not a clear understanding of where it came from, but what we can say is it was used primarily by the Spanish and the Portuguese explorers during this era. They had a very large hull when you compare it to like other ships that we've talked about in the past, like the Dow ships, but this hull will allow them to be able to store stuff that will allow them to have food and water for the journey, as well as a space for crew members to sleep and so forth, and then have space to carry stuff if they do find anything along the way. The sails were triangular, the Lateen sails essentially, and they would be used to help go into the wind. Not to mention that the hull itself was be able to handle the high seas. And because of the very large rudder that was at the end of it, it was very maneuverable. So the Caravel itself would be the ship that ends up being part of the 1492 expedition by Christopher Columbus, in which he will discover the New World, the Americas, and arrive in the Caribbean during his expedition there. Two of the three ships were the Pinta Anita and Santa Maria. The Pinta Anita were the ships that were caravels, or at least that's what they have been deemed as in the historical record. Another one is the Carrack. This is a Portuguese design. It's a very large ship, and it was designed primarily to be able to haul lots of cargo across the sea. And it was used by the Portuguese from 14th to 17th century. So this technology allowed trade for especially the Americas, and then the Portuguese are also going to find their way into the Indian Ocean trade network, and so their access to those trade and such required ships that allow them to be able to bring back large amounts of resources and luxury goods that they are seeking. And so that is like the big advantage of the Carrack, is just that it's a very large ship and it's got a lot of storage for trade. Another one is the Fluyt, and this is a Dutch design, and it has plenty of cargo space. It's not quite as big as the Carrack, but the Carrack required much more crew to run, whereas the Fluyt needed much less crew to run the ship. And so this ship alone will help the Dutch build this gigantic trading post empire that will make them the dominant traders, and especially in the ocean, for some time. And so it's a very cool ship design, and it, because of the fact that it was cheaper and required less people to be able to operate it, and that it would bring in lots of luxury goods from the places that they would trade with, makes it a pretty significant ship design of its era. If you want to learn more, and I really encourage you, in fact, I dare you, I triple dog dare you, which means you probably should do it at this point. Go watch Freemanpedia's illustrative examples on YouTube about the Dutch flutes. I recommend all of his videos because he is like so much more entertaining than I am. His production value is way better. And it's okay. You can agree with me. I won't be offended by that. But he does a good job of talking about not just the flutes, but also some other ship designs that I talk about. But he goes into much more detail about not just how this ship design is innovative in its way, in its time period, but also how it helps the Dutch build what is their trading post empire. And the last ship is one that I put in here. It's not on the College Board list of illustrative examples, but it is a ship design that does play a significant role in history at this time and era, and that's the Galleon. It's designed by the Spanish, and it was designed to, partake in trade, but also to be essentially a warship. It could have up to 400 different cannons that they would put out the bows. You can see in my little GIF here. Is it GIF or GIF? It doesn't matter. But anyway, the cannons that they would use to defend the cargo, especially for the Spanish, who were mining, gold and especially silver out of South America, and so there was plenty of piracy and pirates in the seas surrounding South America as well as in the Caribbean. Yes, there were real pirates in the Caribbean. It's not just a movie or show or cultural phenomena. It actually happened. But this ship was the one that allows them to both protect their empire and their gold and silver that they were mining out of the Americas. Okay, so that's it. That's a real short one. Essential question is right here. Make sure you answer and respond to it on Canvas. Until then, I will see you next time, which should be soon, is topic 4.2, the causes of European exploration.